Hello, everybody. Happy Thursday. Happy second episode of the weekday. And at the Elephants, we got a brand new episode for you this week. Very excited to share with you the lovely Miss Shayna Penn. She is school design and production stage management. And I really want to get right to the episode because it's not super short. It's a long one. And it's all Shayna's fault. And I say that with love because I love someone who can talk more than me. And as you were about to find out, I did an episode of At the Elephants with someone who can talk more than me. She has a lot to say, though. It really isn't just purely rambling, but I will say this episode's a little extra ADHD. I do my best, if you've watched this show before, listened to this show before, I can be tangential. I can be like, let me tell this story, or like, hey, let's follow up on that. I try really hard to bring it back to what we were talking about and sum things up. But this episode, because of both Shayna and I's appetite for following new leads, is a little bit like that show Lost. Not just in that's how you might feel at some point, but also like, so what if we introduce some polar bears and we don't fully explain where they're from, man? It's going to be okay. Just go on the ride, go on the journey. We talk about a lot of really fun stuff in this episode. We have chats about growing up in South Jersey, condolences on the Phillies' loss, Shayna, in the World Series. Sorry about that. And I'm sorry it was to the Astros. That's got to hurt a little bit more. But we got into that. Largely, one of the biggest things we talked about, I'm going to check my list of different stuff we've got coming up, but largely we talked about her working on cruise ships. It's something I thought I was going to do out of school. I remember, and I think I tried to get into it in the interview, but Cirque du Soleil came to school, and they had somebody who had made cruise ships their life, and they really did almost like a little masterclass job fair thing on cruise ships, and we're talking about all the money you'd make. It's funny enough because I since then have had a lot of friends and musician friends and people I've known that have played cruise ships for a living, either as performers or musicians of some kind, or now in stage crew as well. And it is a mixed bag. There's a lot to learn about what it's like to get a job on a cruise ship. And this is the episode for you if that is interesting to you. We got into the dynamics of changing ships and changing lines and how people are treated on the ships and all this different stuff. I'm not going to take up a bunch more of your time because Shayna is going to take up a bunch more of your time, but it's going to be great. She's lovely. She's talented. She's very hardworking. She's very beautiful. She's Shayna Penn, everybody, and here she is.
I could have been not an asshole. Also, if I waited, I couldn't have been an asshole, so I'll take that one.
My wife is like not a backseat or like passenger driver, but she does have like a lot of. She's a great driver, but she's very nervous, kind of watching other people do unpredictable things. Yeah. Like I'm driving, but if we get cut off, she's like, "Oh my God," and I'm like, "But you're fine."
Yes.
I'm the one who's in control of that affecting me and then our safety being an issue.
Regardless of who I am in the car, I still think it's all a psychological game.
I think that's true.
And I hate when I'm with drivers that are on the other side of not being in tune to the rest of the road.
Right.
Like if they're the one who's going to cause the accident, that's when I'm like, oh my God, please stop.
Well, justifiably.
Yeah.
Because you want to get home like alive and stuff.
It helps.
So high maintenance.
Truly.
You want to live through every journey.
Good standards, yo.
That's a good distance. You're welcome to move around and adjust as much as you like. I don't mind a this, but just kind of a fist. A fist is about something give or take. Great. So just don't end up with like this guy, and then all of a sudden we're talking like this, and you've left
I'll just
it over
sort
here.
of keep it this way. And so what are some of the talking points tonight?
Oh, there aren't any.
Oh, great.
Yeah, no, I don't do that. That's not how this show works. I do a lot of shows.
This is not the armchair expert where you pressure me into having children because you think I'm pretty. Great.
Is there something you want to talk about?
No, that's just a Dax Shepard special. And I love his podcast, and I love that he's grown and he's taken the feedback people have given him about the way he conducts his interviews sometimes.
What does he do?
He just like in his
This is Kristen Bell's husband, the actor?
Yeah, he has like this big podcast called Armchair Expert.
Okay.
And I have only just recently discovered it. So like all of his early episodes, because I'm like, going from 2018 to present.
Right.
Everyone who's like not got children on that show who come onto his podcast, like, I don't know if kids are for me. He's like, you should be a parent.
Really?
And he addressed the controversy one day.
Eventually,
one of the
a bunch of
episodes.
people were like, you should stop telling people that.
And he said, look, if I see people who are in any way wishy-washy, they're obviously on my podcast because I think they're good, capable, competent people. I think they are going to be more capable parents than most people who want to have them out there who are.
He means it as a compliment, not as like a pressure.
Correct.
Okay.
And I think that it comes across as he's trying to push his own opinion because he does that with other things.
Right.
And so I'm always
What's the title of the show?
Armchair Expert.
Well, he's got expert in the fucking title. He's going to talk you down a little bit. That's the whole.
Sure.
That's set up from the get-go.
And he's the kind of guy, like, if you just say, like, free Medicare for all, he's going to be like, do you trust the government to run healthcare? Like, he is going to challenge you a little bit.
Sure.
And I get that because I think everything needs a little bit of critical thinking to it.
Sure. That's smart.
Yeah. I like to think so.
I only ever thank you for doing this.
Also, yeah,
Let's
you're
start
welcome.
with that. So
Is
that's
it
fun.
like
we're going.
cool?
Where
great.
it's happening right now.
Amazing. Did it ever stop?
That's a great way. That's a great way to start.
Yeah.
No is the answer.
Cool.
It didn't. It's always been going on. No, thank you for doing it. A lot of the episodes of the show that I'm going to do are going to be remote, like Zoom interviews, only because we're everywhere, the School Arts people.
And you don't live in Winston-Salem anymore, and you don't live out of a suitcase.
And I don't live in New York City, where so many more interviews for the show are available to me.
Sure.
It's way, way more populated over there, and also just like easier to get to. Even if it takes time, it's just easier to get to somebody's
place. Rush hour on a subway across town is very different than driving across LA at rush hour.
It just takes
less
stillness
than 90 minutes.
And patience. There's no thinking involved. You just kind of have to do it until it's done.
You just gotta like pray the MTA gets you somewhere.
Right. And then find peace when they don't. Or
just despair.
Yeah, exactly. Just give up. No, I appreciate you doing it. I only ever prep one question for this show. If anybody's listening or watching that's seen it before, it's not a premeditated thing, just because I don't know what I want to talk to about people unless maybe they've done some very particular project that I want to be like, hey, what was that like? But other than that, I generally don't. I mean, I want to talk about the cruise ship thing because that's a great, interesting thing for anyone who's an artist or interested in artists to talk about that niche market of getting in that work. We've talked about this before off camera. I thought that's where I was headed for quite a while.
Right.
Doing like lighting and stuff back when that was my game. But no, the only premeditated question is, where are you from?
I am from Cherry Hill, New Jersey. I'm from my mom.
Right.
I'm from Cherry Hill, New Jersey, which is 20-30 minutes east of Philadelphia.
Right.
And I had this really huge luxury growing up where the high school I went to had a really strong arts program.
Nice.
And so I was super lucky. And I got to go see so many shows in New York because Hebrew High School would go on field trips once or twice a year to go. My drama department would go once or twice a year. Sometimes I would get excused as an English class field trip if I was seeing a classic, like when Claire Danes did Pygmalion on Broadway.
Got it.
So I got to see shows frequently.
Did you say Hebrew High School? Is that where you went?
No, I went
there. That's pretty on the nose. That's maybe not the right expression for that, but still. But I didn't realize that's like very direct. It's not even Beth Israel High School or something.
No, I went to a public high school.
Okay.
And I had separately from public school all growing up, twice a week I would go to Hebrew school in the evenings after school. And then after the bar bat mitzvah years, you go into Hebrew high school.
Okay.
And it's classes usually once a night and weekends. And I went for a year and I sort of was phasing out of going to synagogue 3 times a week at that point. And
that's a lot.
Yeah, 1 or 2 days for Hebrew school plus Saturday for Shabbat services. I'm very happy being Jewish. I'm not as observant as I used to be, but right. I love what I grew up with and gained from it all. I think I'm a more well-rounded person for it.
I wanted to be Jewish so bad when I was in high school, like so bad.
Okay,
I'm not.
Where did that idea, like where did that want begin?
I'm from Texas, where we don't we don't have any Jews. There's like
Yeah.
no Jews there.
Oh, so
I
you
would
wanted
have
to be the
like,
one to stand out.
I had two. This is true. When I was growing up, I had two Jewish friends.
Yeah.
One of them was named Josh Pudnos, and the other guy's name, I'm not joking, was Ben Jew.
That's
His
amazing.
last name was Jew, and it was so appropriate that he was one of the only Jewish kids in the
Yeah.
entire community. And
It's a description and it's a name.
Yeah, I
it's
was
like
like-
a 2-for-1.
well, and also it kind of, I'm kind of hoping that he's less observant now, so that his name, only because I hope his name is even more accurate. He was like, well, Ben Jew, not as much anymore. But
Is his middle name a little?
right? I was like, you should name your son Christian.
Yeah.
I had so many jokes that he did not enjoy, which is fine. But Ben and Josh were really cool kids, but they weren't really the reason why I wanted to be Jewish. It was fully a film and television thing.
Right.
I grew up with really.
Because it's an obvious career pathway. We own the industry.
You're not joking totally here.
Not fully joking.
No, and here's the truth. I grew up in a Christian family, but my parents, of all the people in my family, is very big, that took church very seriously, but my parents didn't. They were like the two kids who were like, yeah, my parents are Christian.
Right.
Whatever. They may have a personal relationship with God,
Yeah.
but we didn't really go to church a lot. When I was really little, I would go with like, if I went to visit my grandparents, we would go to church. I had friends who were Catholic and we would sometimes go to mass with them.
Yeah.
But my mom and dad did not go to church or take me to church, and especially not my dad.
That's the opposite of how I grew up going to synagogue every single weekend. So it's kind of interesting to hear the other side of it.
Yeah, we weren't doing any of that, and the values were kind of there, honestly.
Yeah.
And my grandma, especially my mom's mom, is still very Christian, goes to church, and she was like classic, ideal, not who you normally meet in the South Christian. She was like kind and not judgmental, doing the real Jesus-y shit of like, you take care of people and you know, look after the poor and all that kind of stuff.
Kind-hearted version of
big time.
Christianity.
Big time.
Not the more
No, not the
judgment,
fire and brimstone. That wasn't the environment.
It's
but
something
all
I love
of my
about people like you, like where you're able to acknowledge there are good and bad sides to what I've experienced. Yeah,
of almost all of them.
Yeah.
Except when I was growing up, I had no examples of like anything wrong with Judaism. I was like, they all seem so fucking nice. And they don't, and none of them seem to take it.
Because no one usually likes us, so we're kind of just expecting, like, unless you're nice, like we're just not used to that.
And everyone I met who was Jewish, which was Ben and Josh, they were very nice. But
I thought you meant Ben from School of the Arts for a second.
Oh no!
When
When I got to School of the Arts, the Jew game went way up, and all of a sudden I had all these great Jewish friends.
You're closer to the Mason-Dixon line, so it just naturally you get a higher population.
Well, and literally, I got into drama. My dean is Gerald Friedman's pretty Jewish, and so that we're getting ahead of myself a little bit, but the reason I wanted to be Jewish in high school was purely just because so many of my like heroes in the world of like comedy and the entertainment industry and all that stuff, they were Jewish. And not only that, they had so many great jokes about being Jewish. You know, I grew up watching like Adam Sandler and all these people that I'm like, man, that just, and I think it was in part of that high school phase of wanting to be like, you're finding your identity. You want to figure out who you are. Some people are like really attached to like the goth thing, or they attach to this. And I just remember,
boy, you can spot the goth Jew style a mile away. You know, it's like a Hamza and a Star of David, but it's all black.
I would have soaked in that so quickly.
Yeah.
If there had been goth Jews in my high school, that would have been my crowd.
That's the new CW show.
Oh my God. Goth Jews on the CW, folks. It's
we'll be here all season.
Yeah, that is a great idea. I didn't know this was going to be a pitch meeting, but this is
Evidently,
working out.
we're going to have to get the copyrights out
This
now.
is going to be very good. Let me make a note. No, but I was very much looking for some sort of community, some sort of faith. And then when I was in high school, junior year, the summer between sophomore and junior year, I moved to New York.
Okay.
And I was living in like Hell's Kitchen, Manhattan.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah.
Wow.
I spent a whole year, junior year, living in Manhattan, going to school. I had a lot of Jewish friends. And I just remember being like, maybe these are my people. I'm not one of these people, but maybe can be the community. And my first girlfriend when I moved there was Jewish. And I was like, maybe I get brought into that kind of thing.
Yeah.
All alone, junior year, in December, I
Yeah.
got my own menorah.
That's
I
awesome.
lit my
I'm like
own
smiling at how
candles.
excited you are.
I did. I lit my own. And my mom and my Mexican stepdad are like, "What the hell are you doing? Like what?" And I was like, I'm learning how to say Baruch Atah and get fucking going with these candles is what I'm doing. And I really tried to do it, but then I felt so alone because I was like, no one else really close. And I broke up with the girlfriend. No one else really close to me was
So you didn't
into
get the
it.
baptism in the box of locks or anything?
I didn't even go to temple. I was like, I don't know where.
There's a lot of synagogues here in LA. We can like adjust this.
I don't know if I'm into it anymore.
Just to like get you in once and be like, this is what it's like.
I would love to do that. I would sincerely love to do that. And
and you're coming up on a great time of year to do this because it's almost the new year. And then there's Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. Then there's a ton of other days that celebrate all the different elements of the fall and the harvest and everything like that.
I'm totally into at least checking it out culturally.
Yes.
I've really drifted into the atheism pretty seriously in a literal way. But
well, so two thoughts.
I love
based
the
on,
culture.
And that's something that I love about Judaism. And I've really been talking to a lot of people in my age group about this over the last year, really, because I also go to synagogue less than my grandparents did and my parents respectively. And I identify as Jewish very openly.
Right.
And it's not that I am any less Jewish for not going to synagogue. I just choose to have customs in my life very differently. I grew up with a kosher house, but now dietarily, like I could cut out shellfish and certain things now, but
you have a far stricter diet now than you did when you were kosher.
Totally do. And and that's that's why I like cut myself some slack, but not all. I do pray on Yom Kippur to like sort of make up for the shrimp.
Sure. Who could blame you?
But
Are you a coconut or butterfly girl when it comes to the shrimp? Or
I just grill them.
Or your cocktail style?
Cocktail is good. I've had like I eat shrimp any which way. Like I'm not picky.
Wife loves shrimp. It's not my thing.
She and I are gonna have shrimp and we're gonna just slowly eat it in front of you, and then you're gonna eat ribs in front of me.
Yes. That's a deal. One of my favorite jokes when I was a kid, and this is another reason, one of my like little idols when I was growing up is David Cross, who is from Georgia and raised Jewish, but very early was like, I'm out.
Yeah.
But he had a joke once where he was like, and I didn't get this at first because like I said, I didn't know the culture at all. I had to look up why this was funny.
Yeah.
But he was like, so I have this business idea where what I'll do is I will be hired by kosher Jewish people to come to their house and eat pork in front of them and describe it so that they can at least get the vibe. You know, I'm just eating baby back ribs like, oh.
I have never had pork.
It's so good.
I have had bacon maybe twice in my life.
You've never had any pork other than a couple of bacon strips.
But I also grew up with pescatarian. My parents went pescatarian when I was just about 10 years old.
Okay.
And then my mom stopped being pescatarian when she got breast cancer.
Okay.
She basically said, well, fuck it. If I'm going to get cancer, I'm going to eat pastrami and my cholesterol is going to do what it
Word
does.
up.
And
I respect that.
Yeah. And so my dad went pescatarian to support her.
Mm-hmm.
This was early 2000s. Like we didn't have almond milk, hemp milk, cashew milk. Like we didn't have like 8 versions of tofu. We had like one kind of tofu and it was watery.
Yeah.
So like my dad went pescatarian to support her. And then once she went back to eating meat, he just didn't want to. He felt guilty about the animals and everything. And he stayed pescatarian. So now that it's just them living together, we're all out of the house. My mom doesn't like bring chicken or meat into the house a whole lot because she'd be cooking for one.
Yeah.
So it was really easy for me to go pescatarian. Tons of support there. A couple thoughts though. I think one of the reasons Jews are always making fun of themselves is it's a defense mechanism, right? Like we're lowering the arsenal of reasons why you might hate me. Like the Jews have not historically had a whole lot of respect around the world. Like
I've read some things.
Yeah, like Pharaoh, slavery, like then the Spanish Inquisition.
There was something in Germany.
Yeah, just a little detail.
I'm not a history major.
I think the guy's name was Hitler. So yeah, and so there's every 100 or couple hundred years there's something where people just decide that the Jews don't deserve a spot in the world.
Right.
And
recently there was an issue about you not replacing some people. I think in Virginia or something like that.
it's wild to me, some of the theories that are out there. And it's just really sad to me because we're no better or worse than anyone else on this planet. I understand the conflict with Israel and Palestine. I don't agree with a lot of Israel's more extreme, more prejudiced policies lately, but I also think that who is supporting a lot of the extremists running Palestine? All the other people surrounding Israel, Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Syria, those countries, where do you think the people in Hamas and Gaza get these weapons and funding from? They don't have anything else. So someone recently described Israel to me as like if you were to stand like at the top of the Griffith Observatory and everybody else is pointing guns at you.
Right.
That's essentially what Israel is. It's the only designated place in the world where Jews are meant to be safe. And they are probably number 2 on everyone's bucket list.
What choice do you have to like make a joke?
Right.
Let's lighten the mood a little bit when you're constantly under that tension.
And it also, I think something that I love about Judaism is it does not, the Hasidic Orthodox, more extreme side of Judaism, to me, I liken to the more evangelical side of Christianity.
Yeah,
the more
I've heard that.
Muslim extreme. Like, they're not coming from a place of hatred. They're coming from a point of absolute discipline and a refusal to modernize discipline.
And the idea that like 1,000 years ago they had it right, and we don't really need to improve on that.
And I think there's things that we don't have right now, but I'm not saying everything. I don't need to wear a wool coat in the summer. I don't need to shave my head when I get married and wear a wig. I think,
I did that. That's why I have the hat. This is actually an add-on.
That's the significance of the
spirit
daisy.
Gum.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's for volume.
That's exactly right. I'm glad that you brought up your parents because that's usually how I follow up too. So what mom and pop, what'd they do for money? What they do for a living?
They ran a small business that oversaw different forms of income management. So like different kinds of taxing and accounting and stuff like that.
Got you. So really kicking that stereotype of Jews working in money and finance.
Well, my dad was the son of an accountant. He was an accountant for the government. My grandpa served in World War II in the Navy.
Okay.
And then he became an accountant and, he just had the respectable, however many decade government job with a pension, retired at whatever age. And my mom office managed and also raised 3 children.
That is so interesting because my wife's story is almost exactly the same. They're Korean and pretty intense Christians.
Is that a stereotype too, where they're accountants and doctors and no?
Yeah, right. I've read again, not a history guy, but that's very similar. In that they're religious.
Yeah.
And the dad was the accountant and the mom was kind of the office manager of the independent business.
Yeah.
So I think it's also, it's such a good necessary business that has needed to happen since there's been money, which has been a minute. And it's hard for me to relate to.
At the same time, though, I cannot believe the American tax management functions the way it does.
Sure.
If the IRS wanted, the IRS knows how much we owe. I have to pay an accountant to tell me how much I owe them so that I don't get in trouble.
Right.
And it's just like, wait a second. What if the IRS just hired a bajillion accountants and then I partner with one based on my zip code? Like you just assign one to wherever, zip code you're filing in, and they just tell you right away and they get all your reporting and then you just file it. Either way, everyone is still employed. The system still functions. It's just efficient. Yeah. And it's not a full, and then you don't also have to do a calendar crunch.
You have like some solid ideas.
Yeah.
You're pretty good looking lady.
Yeah.
And you're pretty articulate. Are we running for office? Are we working on a political career? You might be suited for it.
I don't think I have the temperament for the snake pit of politics. I think it's the same reason.
More the lion's den.
Yeah. Drain the swamp, whatever. Drain the gator pit, whatever. So I did get selected into girls' state in high school.
What is it?
That's what I said. And
girls' date?
Girls' state.
Oh, girls' state.
So every state in America, basically, they have girls' state and boys' state. And each, there's a state. So I basically went to the College of New Jersey.
Okay.
And for 5 days or 6 days, I stayed on campus, and it was a bunch of hundreds of girls from all the districts of New Jersey who'd been selected for whatever curricula, whatever standards you're selected through. And you learn about government and you vote for all these different positions throughout the week. And then
it's like a student government, Model UN kind
learning,
of vibe.
Exactly. But it's immersive because you're living in it for 5 straight days. And I will never forget that experience because Michael Jackson died while I was on the computer researching something to make a speech for an election.
2009.
Yeah. And so it was a summer in between junior and senior year. And I got this email or this letter that said, like, you've been selected to Girl State. You should go to the, what is it called? Old people from like the Legion, the American Legion.
Okay.
And they were like, you should report here to get all your paperwork. And I was like, what did I get selected into?
Wow.
And another friend of mine had been accepted from school. So I knew it wasn't a total scam because she was going too. And so I just went for 5 days and learned about government. And before I remembered that my academics in high school were shit because I chose to only focus on artistic classes, I was pursuing a political science major as an option.
I'm not way off.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I sort of just realized I'm not gonna get into the colleges that would challenge me. I don't really think the academic route is for me based on what I chose to pursue in high school. I had sort of backed myself into a corner where a BFA in the arts was appropriate for me.
When did you find... Are your parents artistic people? Are they creative people?
My mom is really creative. We co-created a book series together.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can talk about that.
Yeah.
But was that a thing when you were younger, or did she find that later?
She was a communications major in school,
Okay.
which I feel like back in the 80s.
What does that mean then?
I feel like back in the 80s before we had social media and
Is it like speech and debate kind of stuff? Or is it like digital communications
I have
stuff?
a feeling it's a combination of written verbal communication.
Okay.
She worked before she and my dad started the company. She worked for a woman who ran a theater and arts organization in South Jersey when my parents first moved to South Jersey from the greater New York area. And she's always had a creative streak in her that way. She would paint our bedrooms growing up. Like we didn't have a painter come to our bedrooms. She did everything. Like she would do... For like the nursery for my sister, she did little dinosaurs all across as like a little border. Like she got
hand drew them and stuff like that?
Oh yeah.
That's pretty dope.
I like wanted to do a drip thing on my wall, like a drip, like a cool water pattern. And she just like figured it out and did it herself.
Do you stay in the same house growing up?
Oh yeah.
They still live in the same house you were like born in?
They stayed in it for like 20 years and they were done.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
they
like
were like
after
monogamous and now they move every year and a half. So.
Oh, so like after you graduated and like went off and did your thing, they were like, all right, the family house is done and now we're going to have a new era.
New Jersey is really high in property taxes because of the school system. So they also, basically when we were in middle school, my mom and dad wanted to think of moving us to Florida. My mom loves Florida. My my great-grandparents.
Again, bucking the stereotype of
Jews
get ready moving to Florida.
Get ready. So my great-grandparents had an apartment in Hollywood, Florida.
Okay.
Which is where every old person gets an apartment. It's where the apartment collapsed a few years ago. Because they're all from the 30s or the 50s.
Right. And they like knew they were fucked up and didn't fix it and all that.
You should see them all in person. And so my grandparents shared it with my great aunt. And after my grandma passed away, my great aunt basically took over the whole apartment. So my mom wasn't able to just go to Florida and stay anywhere. You know, she had to, figure out hotels and everything. And then there were just more of us. There were 3 children. So she and one of my aunts decided that they would look at a condo or an apartment in Florida and that we would share it. And we did for a handful of years. And it got to the point where any 3 or 4 day weekend we were in Florida at that place. And it got a little weird for me because not all of my friends went on vacations the way that we did, because I viewed it as a vacation, not a split residence, because we didn't permanently go to school there or anything. We were there, September to May, any 3 to 4 day weekend. Or
did you like
break.
it down there? Like, did you enjoy Florida being from New Jersey?
I liked it a lot. I mean, I wasn't there in the summer. I was like a preteen. So like what's not to love about beaches and pools and like drinking juice from like a juice shop, and because it's Miami. So there's all kinds of fun, fresh stuff that you just don't get in the suburbs of Jersey.
Right. Of course.
But I did recognize that it felt strange and it was starting to make me feel isolated from my friends. And I talked to my mom about it. Initially, the thought was maybe we would live there full time and my dad would spend tax season up north or something like that. And I said to them, I really don't like this plan. I'm a freshman in high school. I have a few years left.
Are you the oldest kid?
I'm the oldest, and my younger siblings are going to be graduating soon enough too anyway. Like we don't have a life in Florida that dictates a full-time life for us as kids. Like I would have to make all my friends over again. It's not like I have a bat mitzvah to invite anyone to. Like I'd be going to high school, 3 years at one school as a newbie. Like, I don't like the feeling of this. And
Sure.
to my parents' credit, for multiple reasons, they chose to keep us in Jersey. And my sister's graduation party was terrific because they'd already bought the house in Florida and gutted it and renovated it. And they'd cleaned out the house by the time my sister graduated high school. So
Gotcha.
her party was Saturday. They moved on Sunday.
So they kind of took the hint, but then we're like, all right, fine. But when you guys are fucking gone, we're doing what we're going to do.
Absolutely. And I don't think any of us hold it against them that they did that.
Right.
I think there are some feelings of, wow, we wish you hadn't purged as much stuff in the move down the
Sure.
coast. Like, we wish you would have kept a little bit more. But in what way could I hold it against them paying all the money to maintain a house they don't need in a state that taxes them in a way that they got what they needed? They got us all through a terrific school system.
You said they moved. Where do they live now?
They are in Florida. They're in
They
St.
did eventually
Pete.
like take Florida the way they wanted to.
Yeah, they didn't move back to the East Coast. They moved more to the Tampa, St. Pete
Sure.
area. And they've moved a few times since then, not fully by choice, but I think they're now hoping to settle for a bit. And it's interesting because I grew up, we moved when I was 2 to a bigger house to have a bigger family. But other than that, I mean, from 2 to 18, it was the same house.
Right.
They moved when I was 23, 24. I didn't even say goodbye to my house the last time. I didn't know the last time I was in my house
Gotcha.
because I was working on cruise ships. So
Yeah.
I missed my sister's graduation party. Like, I was home in December, and it was we hosted a sort of New Year, everybody see Shayna. She's been gone for 8 months.
Right.
Kind of a get together with family friends and everything.
It's pretty cool.
It was super nice. My parents hosted great parties growing up.
It sounds like overall a
Yeah.
pretty supportive family unit. Like you
Super-
guys are really invested in each other's lives and making sure everybody's happy.
And like, we put the fun part in dysfunctional. Like, that's our joke, is like, because we like to have fun as a group.
It's
and
a pretty good joke.
I know, but
It's
it's
all
like
right.
it's not our original poster, you know?
Oh no, of course not.
Yeah, we
That's
didn't
not bad.
create it, but we just kind of like own it as a
Yeah.
motto.
Yeah, we just handle it as the mantra. I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Like, I think part of the other aspect of Judaism, just to continue circling back to it, it's a lot of our holidays are not meant to be commercial for a reason.
Right.
A lot of our holidays are derived from what's happening in the Lunar New Year.
Yeah.
Because we follow a Lunar New Year for our holidays.
Right.
So when someone says, oh, Hanukkah's early, that means it's, before December 1st or around December 1st.
Right.
Last year it was it was right after Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So when someone says it's later, that means the lunar calendar is actually further into December than it was the
Right.
year prior. So, for example, Christmas, Easter, a little brimstone-y if you think about what the holidays are like. Everyone has to give presents, but like the actual religious aspect of it is you go to church for part of it. But the meaning behind the holiday's been lost quite a bit over the years as the
Sure.
commercial market's taken it over. And that's not a criticism, because I think money is money and people want to make it, and they should.
Well, that, and also I think the thing that it's transitioned to, as someone who fucking loves Christmas so much, it's one of my favorite things.
And it does generate a beautiful time of everyone's hearts each year.
it can be one of the best times of year. It's
Yeah.
totally not what it used to be about, but I think that
Yeah.
evolution has been kind of a good thing. I was just
Yeah.
talking to my wife at the end of last year about how much I love how certain places just blow so much money on making it shiny and sparkly for a little
Yeah.
while. And I'm like, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
This is a good thing. Because if you do let yourself enjoy it, walking around like New York City at Christmas time,
Yeah.
it's fucking gorgeous.
Okay, I
It's
have
so
the
it's so rosy and
best
good.
Christmas story in New York.
Okay.
I was working on a gala that a lot of really big Broadway names were performing at.
Okay.
They were all performing songs from South Pacific. So
Okay.
Daphne Rubin Vega, who originated the role of Mimi in Rent on Broadway,
Okay. Yeah.
and she was just in the Heights, and she was performing Bally High, the song from the musical. And she and the director had evidently rehearsed prior to this gala, and somewhere in transit, her Louboutins got lost that she was going to wear for the performance. So Christian Siriano was providing
These are
dresses.
shoes?
Yeah,
Got
Christian Louboutins are a fancy type of shoe.
Not to be confused with Louis Vuittons.
Correct. Also
Sounds
not
very
to
similar.
be confused with Christian Siriano, who provided the garments. He's a very big designer.
Okay.
And so she had brought these, $700 something shoes to wear, and
Goodness.
they're missing. Her assistant can't find them.
This
The
is its
director
own
is
play.
like, where are they?
Right.
And so it's after 5:00. It's curtain. I think we started at 7 or 8. It is after 5:30. It is like into the closing store time. Like stores are closing at this hour. And it's the middle of December, and I'm at the St. Regis. So like right off of 5th Avenue where all the shops are. And they're like, can you just go take the director's card? Here's her shoe size. Here are her parameters for what she needs in a shoe, and just find her a good one to wear, and then we'll figure it out. I had to go to like Jimmy Choo and Coach. And like I went into like I'm like pushing through the crowds. It's like dinner time in New York and Christmas. I was like, get me the fuck out of this errand. So I would take pictures of the shoes, and I would text them to her assistant. Her friend was helping her. And they would text back like, does it have this kind of like, because we didn't have time to treat the shoe so she wouldn't slip or anything. So we just had to like hope it would work. And, you don't want to walk out on stage to sing your single song and not be able to walk gracefully.
It would seem to me, and maybe this is because I'm a fella and a very practical person, that would be more the priority than like exactly how they looked or how expensive they were. Like, just
That
give
was
me some
exactly
shoes
it.
I'm not going to eat shit in. That's my number one
Well,
concern.
the tall order is how do I make sure it's going to work if she's not there with me, but the performance started in 45 minutes.
Well, that's what I'm
So she
saying
didn't
is
have
like
time
just
to
get
exit.
some shoes
Yeah.
and then spend your extra time scuffing up the bottoms to make sure that they don't. Yeah.
And so, the tedium of production, are we returning them or is she keeping them?
Right,
because
right.
we can't scuff them if they're getting returned and
Yeah,
all of that.
true shit.
But she had parameters of like this height, this type of heel. Like if I haven't practiced in them a lot, I don't want to be in a type of shoe that's going to be
Okay.
hard to practice in and stuff. Like I'm not going to get her a 4.5 inch heel if she's never
Okay.
worn it before.
Right.
So I was able to grab her a pair of shoes and shovel on back, and I got to her like 5 minutes before curtain, and they were
Nice.
perfect.
What
Yeah.
what attracted you, and at what point did you realize that solving those behind the scenes problems in that tight crunch was like your place in it? Because as a stage manager, you sign up for like
Yeah.
that's your fucking job. Like some
Yeah.
people as a stage manager, you're going to spend a lot of time, calling it. That's a lot of the show, sure. But really, especially along the process of like what you're doing as you do the show is solving problems. You're like, well, what the fuck are we going to do now? Like that's
Right.
And then they come to you. I know this because as a directing student, and then as someone that even now in my life, I now work in television, so I don't have a stage manager, but I have an assistant or I have an associate producer.
Yeah,
or I
that first
have an
AD
AD.
track is the stage manager.
And they're very much the same thing. And when I was at school, it was like this. And now it's like this, which is like, I am the right side of the brain in the room. My job is to make it funny, to make it make sense, to make it good to watch.
Yeah.
And then I need to turn to someone else who has done the paperwork and made sure the schedule makes sense. Like I need the
Right.
you so badly. And I can't imagine doing that job.
So
So
my
what calls you to that?
the story that immediately comes to mind. So my freshman year of high school, I was quitting swimming. I had been a competitive swimmer my
Right.
whole childhood, and I knew that my shoulder wasn't going to hold up. And my orthopedic surgeon basically said to me, I don't need to operate on you. Nothing is torn, but everything is just so inflamed that it's just your shoulder doesn't fit in your socket correctly right now.
Goodness.
So that's just not great. And he didn't want to do anything to me because they were still holding out hope that I'd grow a bit and my growth plates weren't done shifting.
And you're at what height right now?
4'11 and a
What was that?
4'11 and like a
4'11?
half, 3/4, depends on the chiropractor.
Do you just tell people? Can you just ever tell anyone just 5 foot even?
No,
for
I can't do it
you feel like it's
consciously.
false?
It's total misleading. Like I've
Got
never
it.
cracked it on the rule, like on the thing at the doctor's office
Right.
when they like pull the thing out of the scale.
Yeah.
I just never hit that
So
point.
the growth didn't happen. The swimming was not a long-term thing.
And I needed a club. Like I needed activities.
Community.
And so my high school super competitive
Hebrew
academically.
high was not enough.
No, if you don't graduate from my high school with at least one varsity letter, one or two sort of non-for-profit charitable type activities and a couple other artistic, like you have to be super well-rounded to graduate from my high school.
Wow.
The average, like for example,
I
I had
kicked out freshman year.
Right. I had a 3.3 out of 4 GPA and a something over 6 out of 7 weighted, and I was top third of my
2.1.
class. Yeah, I was only top third of my class, which is
Wow.
remarkable because I didn't bother to do homework or anything all
Sure.
through. Like my dad was like, I used to get really worked up about being less intelligent than my younger sibling because we have a bona fide genius in my family.
Got it.
And it's the
That's
sibling
tough.
immediately after me school wise, and it's
Right.
like, what do you mean you understand calculus and you're 10? I'm 6. Like I can't.
They're
figure.
behind, but they're ahead.
Oh my gosh, mentally thousands of years ahead. It's really remarkable. Like Jeremy graduated with 3 majors and 2 minors. And to this day, I still can't remember them all correctly because, we've had how many conversations about it.
At some point, you're like, you manage your own success.
Correct.
It's not my job to keep it all straight.
Well, my dad would say to me, and he still does to this day, he says, how would you ever know if you're intelligent or not? You are probably so much smarter than you realize because you graduated top third of your class and you barely cracked open a textbook all 4
Right.
years. If you could half-ass your way through that school, you could have actually been valedictorian if you tried.
Yeah, maybe, but you didn't want to do that.
No, science and math.
If you wanted to do it, you would have done it. You just didn't want to do it.
There's a type of thinking that works with my brain, and it's critical thinking where there is a solution that I know I'm working to. If it's just aimless formula plugging, I can't figure that out. So there are just types of math and sciences that I cannot physically, like I would do so much extra homework and extra not extra credit, but those after class sessions. Like in middle school, I remember I was really struggling with one math teacher, and the other math teacher, I swam with his kids, and I knew Mr. Thompson, and I knew he was super chill. So I would go to his class once or twice a week after school for help, and I still couldn't get it. So I was like, it's me. It's got to be me at this point. So I definitely recognized all my various limitations, and I had going into high school, my friends and I sat and we basically looked at this multiple page pamphlet of all the clubs at Cherry Hill East. And a few of them were going to start doing stage crew. And I had a couple of friends that had gone to the schools before me, and I was friends with them. And they basically said, this was the early days of Facebook where we posted all of our business.
Right.
And
like right after it became
yeah.
not just college.
Totally. And Molly and Hannah, these twins, were basically like, we do stage crew, you should come join us. And I went, yeah, sure, okay. And I went.
So you went right into stage crew. You weren't a performer first.
Oh, no.
Because a lot of stage managers were like actors for 20 minutes or something. And
I was
then
a
they were
carpenter. I was a scenic painter. I did electrics backstage during shows. I did everything but perform.
So fundamentals were like, you were ready for that shit because you had already kind of dipped your toe.
Yes. And this was a really advanced arts program. Like our school, a couple years before I joined, like when I was in 4th or 5th grade, the high school that I went to did Les Mis, and they won every state award for performing arts you could, to the point that they haven't even been nominated since. Because it was just like a clean sweep of I was in 4th grade. I wasn't even in high school at the time.
Oh, that was before that.
I was 10 years old. And the kid in class that everyone used to mistake us as twins, he was cast as Gavroche and one like young actor in the state. And I had this recovered memory a few years ago, therapeutically. I always have been keen on performing, but I just will self-sabotage anytime I'm in a position to. And in 4th grade, they basically told all the blonde-haired children in the school district who were in choir, who the choir teachers thought were good, that they should audition to be in Les Mis because they needed young Cosette and young Gavroche.
Yeah.
So my friend Matt Bennett, blonde, adorable, everyone used to think we were twins, happened a lot. He got cast as Gavroche, one young best actor in the state. The girl below me got cast as Cosette. And my mom, when I handed her the flyer, looked at it and said, well, it conflicts with Hebrew school, so you can't go to the audition.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't even think to push for it. And it's like, I think I have always had this interest in the arts, but I always assumed I was meant to be an observer. And so, complete tangent from everything I was just explaining about the origins of stage management. As a form of therapy.
No, but I asked the question about whether or not you're a performer, and that sounds like very much like your first opportunity. And though you were denied it and not really given the chance to try, it's not like you resented that forever and
Totally.
you're like, fuck, I should have been an actress and she ruined it.
So I played multiple instruments growing up. I played the flute,
didn't know that. That's
played
pretty
piano, and I did choir. I did choir up until until my freshman year of college.
Okay.
When I I was in, I also played the handbells. I was in 2 handbell groups.
You should have led with
school.
that. You should be leading with the handbells.
If you need to know why I'm trying to be cool, I'm not leading with that. So in high school, my senior year of high school, I was in school at 7:30 every morning to do rehearsals before homeroom with my handbell choir.
Right, of course.
It was 12 or 14 girls. We sang and played handbells at the same time, anywhere from 2 to 4 per person per song. And I was also in an all handbell group that rehearsed on Tuesday afternoons. And then I was in choir.
Explain handbells if they don't already know.
Handbells are those things that they play outside the Salvation Army, but like the correct musical version of them with correct technique.
Right.
And they each are assigned like a note. So if I want to play a C and an E flat, I have to play 2 handbells.
Right.
And so I was in a group, to be able to play a song, there are lots of notes in a song, especially if you've got, I don't know, key changes or anything, or if you want to do a medley. So for example, my senior year, my friend did an arrangement of Here Comes the Sun. A lot of key changes in there.
Sure.
Really fun, really good challenge. We all were playing 2 to 4 handbells per girl in that song, which is really challenging because to play a handbell, if you're holding one in one hand, you're going like this.
Right.
If you're holding 2, you have to then adjust the angle of your hand to get the right bell to go.
You know what I think of when I think of handbells?
How nuts I am.
Well, that now too, because I can't believe I didn't know that. But also, you know that fucking commercial that comes on in December where the little Hershey's Kisses play?
Yes.
Fuck, what Christmas song is it?
Dun, 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 dun.
Is it?
Carol of the Bells?
I don't know if it's Carol of the Bells.
No,
I think
that's the Clydesdales. That's the one they do with the horses for Budweiser.
I can't remember which one it is, but I think of this because I recently had this huge argument with my dad. So there's a classic commercial that comes on every Christmas, and I think it's "We Wish You a Merry Christmas." It's like doon 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 doon, and the little like Hershey's Kisses play like handbells, and it's been on TV since like
forever.
1987. I looked this up because
really?
because I was talking to my dad.
Because you love Hershey Kisses.
And handbells. And I was like, hey, Dad, you know that commercial with the Hershey's Kisses where they play the song? And he's like, no. And I'm like, Dad, every fucking year they play the same commercial on TV ad nauseum.
I'm only lightly familiar with it. I'm not as like gung-ho about it because
you know what I'm talking about.
I'm familiar with it.
30 years older than me and insisted he's never seen it. And I'm like, that's impossible. Is he the generation that
flips channels to avoid commercials?
No.
Oh.
No.
That was my dad.
I wish he did.
He never watches.
He just lets them happen to
Oh.
us. It's horrific. And then I was like, okay, well, let's go a little bit further. Do you at least remember the commercial with the M&Ms where Santa comes out and they come around the corner and they both go, they are real, and fall down? And he's like, no, I've never seen that.
Oh, that's
I'm like,
not
you're
the one I
fucking
thought you were
lying.
going to tell me about. I don't know that one.
That one has also been around since like 1992, and they play it every single
Geographical
Christmas.
marker, Mr. Hershey's Kisses. I grew up a couple hours from Hershey Park.
Yeah, you're not far away from the home.
Yeah, one winter, like Christmas break, my sister was like a baby. She was still like in cribs and pack and plays.
Got it.
So my parents schlepped us to Hershey Park for a weekend for the Christmas holiday. Because what did Jews do? And so the hotel we stayed at, the Hershey Hotel or whatever it is, the power or electrical line they shared with something down the street had a fire.
Oh, shit.
So the electrical line had gotten involved in the fire.
Lights off.
Sort of. In the middle of the night, the alarm goes off and we could smell smoke.
Oh, shit.
And I just remember my mom opening the door and coming back in, grab the children. And so it's like, I'm going to say 2 a.m. That's arbitrary. I don't remember. But we were all in the lobby, all the families, all the children. We're in the lobbies. We're in our pajamas. We're in our coats. No one's looking thrilled.
Right.
They give us all chocolate in the middle of the night to just like and keep the children and humans and like to keep the adults and the children entertained.
Good
and it
for
was
them.
just like, keep the humans happy. And eventually we all went back to our rooms and went back to bed. But that's my Hershey part. And, well, also musically speaking, I went to a really great district for the arts, a school district for the arts growing up. We used to do, in middle school and high school, we used to do competitions. So
Got it.
I used to go to competitions at Hershey Park. They have a hockey arena for more minor hockey leagues. We'll play games there. And so I would go and compete once a year, either in band for flute or for choir or both. And I would go compete there once or twice a year.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I definitely have a musical side to me. I haven't ever, like, I was not built to sing solo in front of people.
Got it.
I do well in groups that way. So
You don't dig the singled out attention.
no, I had the worst.
I can sense your tension just talking about it.
Yeah. And stage fright was very real. Like, at one point, so my freshman year, we did Beauty and the Beast, and I'll get to the story I was about to tell you through the journey of stage management.
Yeah.
So my freshman year, we did Beauty and the Beast, and I was on stage crew, and I was really little. So the way that we built this set, there was like one side of the castle was the West Wing, the other side was the other wing, but it was just like part of it. It became the library in Act 2.
Got it.
So it was like two octagons that rotated at different points in the show. Like, they would detach from the main set of the castle and then they would move across the stage.
Cool.
And they moved because we were underneath inside of them. They built like a little cubby hole for the big seniors and then little tiny Shayna, who could fit under stuff, to go push along a glow tape pathway.
Wow.
This was high school. And so no automation.
Yeah.
But it was my sort of first foray into doing it. And I remember I had one scenic transition to do, and I was upstage, and one of the girls playing Belle, because each show we did had a double cast.
Okay.
Because we had so many kids doing the shows.
Yeah, they always do that shit.
Totally. So one of the girls playing Belle had to change from one dress to the other. And I just remember her standing backstage going, "Who's going to help me change my dress?" And I just looked at her and I went, "I'll help." Like, I never wanted to say no. Like, I couldn't get enough of this roll up your sleeves and like get something done.
Yeah.
I just had never experienced that before because I'd never done anything with purpose that way. Like, if I swam, it's to swim a race. Like, I didn't do that anymore. When I sort of just fell out of playing the flute and piano. Like, I kind of just ended them because I didn't want to anymore.
Yeah, lost interest, it happens.
Yeah.
That's the cool thing about being supported when you're a kid, is you get to try a bunch of shit, and a bunch of it you quit because you're like, I don't fucking do karate anymore. I just don't care.
Like, I hit a point with piano where I went, I know I'm never going to do this. Like, I think subconsciously my brain went, you're never doing this for a living, so you may as well just quit now. I didn't stop enjoying it. I just didn't feel any desire. Like, nothing drew me to the piano anymore, which is like, it's good and bad to have ADD.
Yeah. No, ADD can help you figure out really quickly what you like and what you have no patience for.
But it's problematic when your parents like pay for lessons for something and they're like, really, you're going to quit?
I mean, I guess it depends on the parents, but I would say firmly, and
We've set up this whole routine for you to love something, and now you just drop it. Like,
but that's being a kid.
Totally.
Like, you like something for a while. I played t-ball. I did karate. I played the drums.
You played Jew. I
played Jew for a while. It was a miracle of miracles. I tried a lot of things, and I some of them I carried on.
Yeah.
Later, I got into drumming again.
Sure.
Because I had the experience. But
you drum?
Yeah.
We have a really cool band name happening.
Is
the
that
Bells
right?
and the Beats? I don't know.
Oh, shit.
Come on.
That's a great idea.
I would absolutely busk on the subway with that.
All of this.
What is the other one we said earlier?
It was the Goth
Jews.
Jew.
Well, I mean, obviously that's
CW
the garage
show.
band.
Yeah. Well, I was in a My Chemical Romance cover band at School of the Arts, and so I've kind of already done the Goth Jew thing in a way.
That's great.
That's true.
So that was sort of how I discovered that interest.
You enjoyed that.
And
you got the joy out of helping the things happen.
Totally. And then the next year, my academics had dropped off so much, my parents were like, we are cutting off how much you get to do theater. So I only did props that spring for the spring musical. And I...
Punished because you found something you loved in a way.
To be fair, I was like not doing well in my actual classes.
Yeah, but neither was I. And I ended up making a great career out of it. And I would, they just let me lean into it. And I think that works too.
If I had gone to like an arts magnet, or if I had pushed to go to an arts magnet, I think they would have been supportive,
right.
But I didn't.
They were worried you wouldn't graduate and shit.
I think they just felt like I think they just wanted to make sure I would get out of school what every kid is supposed to get.
Which is what?
A degree. And so
a diploma.
Right. Like your high school diploma.
Right.
And I think they were just worried. Like I had
They really valued that education.
Oh, sure. And I came from
That's the
traditionally
difference.
academic
My parents were like, if you
parents.
fuck this up, who cares about high school? My mom didn't even graduate high school.
Well, there's a huge difference.
Yeah.
Even my grandmothers went to college, and so I come from like a very educated.
Oh, got
and
it.
so it's
I was
very
the first
expected
one to go to college.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah, sure, whatever.
Well,
even that wasn't a big deal because like my first, it was to some people.
Well, it's something to you.
But again, I don't even have a BFA. I have the arts diploma that they barely even do anymore. Yeah, because I didn't go to academics. Because I fully was like, I'm not good at that kind of school.
The academics that drove me are like the English, like anything where you can dissect and analyze something. I had a great English teacher sophomore and then senior year of school. I had two great English teachers, Miss Cunningham and Miss Bafke. And I always credit them because they changed how I think about text. And that's part of why I'm creative now.
Right.
Is because of them. I can look at things and see why they do or don't work. And that's part of why I thought I was a good stage manager. But it turns out stage managers aren't meant to give creative input in a way that benefits a show the traditional way that a member of the creative team does.
Right.
I can
Unless you're in a very unconventional environment where they're like,
I'm
going to
step in as the AD once the show is running or something.
Right.
So I learned how to analyze literature through them.
Sure.
So where was I going with this? So I just learned what it was like to read something and just go, why is this significant? Where are the things that have come since then that have taken inspiration from it, or things that maybe didn't even realize? It's like that Devil Wears Prada thing where Andy doesn't realize that the sweater was influenced by some fashion shoot 2 years before.
Right.
And so that was really cool for me. Off the top of the head.
We're going to bring classic literature into Devil Wears Prada. Not everyone can do that.
Another good novel.
Yeah.
Novel before movie. Now it's a musical.
I've read that, but yeah.
And
not read the book. I read that it is a book.
I had a feeling.
Yeah.
Since you don't know the Louboutin Gabbana,
Jesus, God, no.
So it's that goth Jew thing. And so, so I really enjoyed that. And in college, I started at one BFA program and I didn't feel like I was getting out of it what I needed. I went to Mason Gross School of the Arts at Rutgers.
Okay.
And that was a department going through a lot of changes while I was a freshman. And I can't hold it against anyone educator in that program. I think it was just the time that I was a student. I
had a first school, and that's exactly what happened. I got accepted by a guy basically because that asked me to come to his program because he saw me as John Proctor in The Crucible when I was a senior.
Right. And that's not weird.
And what?
I liked you in this play. Come be in my school. No.
That's normal.
No,
that's
I think that's
It's an
terrific.
acting program.
It's less predatory when it's not predatory in hindsight. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Well, it didn't matter anyway because he died that summer.
Oh,
so, yeah. How do you feel now? So
terrible.
He invited me in like the spring, and then I was like, oh, that's where I'm going to go. I have no academic record to speak of. It was this tiny community college. It was a community college in Northeast Texas.
You've told me this.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was called, it used to be called Henderson County Community, I think. And then when I went there, it was called Trinity Valley Community College.
Boy, they just roll right off the tongue, both of them.
Yeah, not bad. And it commonly gets, when I would say it, they would be like, oh, Trinity University in San Antonio. And I was like,
no,
not university. No, we didn't earn that
college.
title. But it was one of those like, I thought I was doing shit with my life because I got to go away to community college. At least I got to like not be in my hometown. They had dorms. So I thought that was a huge deal. And but yeah, when I got there in the fall, the number one had died over the summer. The number two took over the program. Right. They hired a new number two. That was the whole program was like two people.
Right.
And I was like, this was barely a good idea when it was a prestigious
I've gotten myself in a
thing.
shitty situation.
And now I'm here, and not only that, it was I get to take some theater classes, but you're making me take fucking academic shit again. I told you guys I don't want to do this. So I fully resigned to not go to college at all.
Yeah.
Then my best friend Brandon Harris was in the drama program in like class 2010.
Right.
And he was like, you should come check out School of the Arts. And I was like, dude, I fucking told you I fucking suck at school. I barely graduated. I didn't even walk because I didn't go to class and I didn't have enough hours to graduate. So I had to like come clean trash cans over the summer so that the vice principal could hand me my diploma in July. Like, I hate school, man. It's my least favorite thing I've ever done in my life. And he was like, but this is different. And they even have a track where you don't have to take academic classes at all. You can literally
And
just
you're
take
just
art class
perking
all
right
day.
up.
And I was like, so you're saying from like 9 a.m. in the morning to like 11 o'clock at night, I could do nothing but theater the whole time? And he was like, right. And I was like,
Sold.
fuck. All right. I'll try it out.
Yeah.
I'll try. I actually thought about the film school for a minute. And
That
then
would have made so much sense too.
yeah, but I was like, I ended up starting in DMP. I started in lighting, and then I went to drama.
And I missed you because I transferred, and it didn't overlap with your time as a lighting major.
What year did you graduate high school?
I graduated in 2010, and then I went right into college.
Got it. So I graduated in 06.
Right.
So either way, we were kind of doing this, and just happened to overlap a little. But anyway,
very happy it happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
You've been a great friend over the years.
And that's very sweet of you to say. I agree 100%. But it was, it was an unconventional path, but it sounds like I love that you figured that out and have that kind of self-assuredness. And I wanted, because we only have so much time.
Yes.
I want to
how much
talk
time
about,
is left?
We'll see.
Okay.
We'll see how much juice we get out of this next section. But I want to talk about the cruise ship thing.
Yeah.
How did you get into that? And then how much have you enjoyed that?
I did not grow up going on to cruise ships at all. And I totally graduated School of the Arts, assumed I was going to go straight to New York, have that traditional pathway.
Broadway style.
The thing that the school was really into promoting as like the pathway to do things. And I, interestingly, never worked on a musical at School of the Arts. I worked on multiple operas, dance, a lot of plays. I just never did a musical. But all of my internships were musical theater driven.
Got it.
So I had supplemented it that way. I was supposed to go be in some capacity of stage management at a festival in Colorado for the summer.
Got it.
And one day I got what looked like a spam email, and it was a third-party recruiter for Royal Caribbean offering me this stage staff position, which is the stage crew on the cruise ship, and then easy ascension to management. And I went, sure. And I met with her, I Zoomed with her, I talked with her before Zoom was what it is now. And I went, sure. Put it in the roster of opportunities. And she just kept offering me things. And I kept saying, no, not right now. I'm busy. And she basically sent me this one itinerary, and a really appealing itinerary. And she said, this is the last offer I'm going to make you, because you've been rejecting all the other ones since March. It was now the middle. No, I'd been rejecting her since the fall or winter, because it was now March, April. And I looked at it and I went, oh, Alaska, oh, Hawaii, oh, Australia.
Pretty cool.
It sounds good to me. I'm really not loving the whole freelance thing. I never have. And I said, sure, screw it. And so I went and worked as a stage staff. I wasn't even in a management position on my first ship. And I went to an older Royal Caribbean ship and had a very interesting time.
Did you do the Cirque thing at school? Like when were they still doing that while you were there?
I never did a Cirque internship.
No, but they would come to, so when I was a first year in DMP, that was the beginning of a thing that I know they did for a while. I don't know how long they kept doing it, where basically Cirque came and did like almost a, what the fuck do you call that? You know, in high school when you go to the
like a
gym,
workshop or an assembly,
a job fair.
Yeah. Oh,
so Cirque came and did a job fair, and that's like, I had always thought cruise ships were cool, but that's where my real thing of thinking I was headed on that track. Because freshman year when I was in lighting, Cirque came, did a job fair. They had all these little mini classes where you come and sit and listen to them talk about what they did.
Yeah.
And there was a chick who was there who was like doing a, not a master class, but like basically a Q&A about like working on cruise ships and doing theater shit. And I was like, and she really specifically was like, lighting, great gig.
Super easy gig.
She was like, you set it up, and once it's all set and
time code. Yeah.
And especially if you're the designer and you're not the like ME hitting the button every day, you're there in case something goes wrong.
So on cruise ships, there's only one position. If you're a resident designer who oversees shows, you're constantly in install, which does suck. But if you're the person on board, you are the technician who fixes everything. You are also the one who programs and designs looks for guest entertainers.
Right.
So it's a sweet gig.
Yeah.
You might put in a couple hours on heavier sea day itineraries when you have more guest entertainers. You're still not doing what you would do in tech for a IATSE show.
Right.
It's a great gig to be a
And they were
specialist.
like travel, and you got, if you can find a
You
situation
have
where
no
you're not paying rent at
expenses.
home and you're out on the boat.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, this is going to be the thing, especially with having nothing tied
Yes.
down.
So
They
when
weren't doing that anymore when you were there?
No, I don't remember any cruise ship or Cirque. Well, there was a Cirque du Soleil presence at Job Fair, and also through USITT, which I went to, they would always hook us up with them.
Got it.
We definitely had Cirque relationships. We sort of had...
Because there's so many School of the Arts kids fucking in that industry.
So many. And by the time I got there, they didn't do those anymore to my knowledge, but we did get FaceTime with them at job fairs and stuff, depending on which representative was there.
But you didn't have that in your head at all while you were at school. It wasn't until afterwards.
Interestingly, at USITT senior year, I met with the Disney team for the parks.
Got it.
I had previously applied to be the SM apprentice position at the parks, and I knew that I was in the top 10 candidates nationwide to be one of these two people they hire, because the woman basically told me as much, because she would have been the person I interviewed with next. And I said, well, that's cool. I also got an interview for a theater internship with a guest director from UNCSA. And she said, well, I'm from that town. I think that's a great theater. And I can't guarantee that you're going to get the internship. I want to guarantee it to you, but I ultimately don't get to make the call. And I want you to have guaranteed work, because I think you have a lot to offer. So she basically advised me to take the internship. Miserable experience. But during that time, she introduced me to Feld Entertainment. Feld Entertainment oversaw what used to be the Ringling Circus, the Barnum and Bailey Circus.
Yeah.
And they oversee like the monster trucks. They oversee Disney on Ice, which was her connection to knowing them.
Got it.
And so I submitted an application to be an associate production manager for the circus, essentially. And during this internship, they kept interviewing me. And I was like, cool. And then they basically said, we're going to have you come visit us in Texas. We're stationed in Texas for a couple weeks. We want you to come do a site visit, and we think we're going to make you an offer. We want you to, be able to join us right away. And I went, wow, that's fast. And they said, yeah, well, the person left us for another opportunity. So we just really need to get someone in quickly.
And
we think
position
you're
to fill.
Absolutely
Cool.
to be the associate production manager on a national major circus. And I would have had like a third of a train car to myself as my cat. Like I would have had like a very sweet gig there. And they flew me out. It was amazing.
It sounds like that didn't happen.
It did not, because I, for whatever reason, had it in my head that theater was the pathway I needed to pursue.
You said no.
And so I turned them down. So later on, about a year later, I was getting this opportunity to do ships. And I went, well, you turned down a full-time job with benefits last time this happened. You'd be kind of stupid to like not take a sure thing.
Doesn't have to be forever.
Yeah, it's a 7.5 month contract.
And it's not a terrible idea for you to have health insurance, because you have some issues.
Yeah, and ship health insurance means you go to the ship doctor. You don't actually get real help when you need specialist
do you not
care.
Get any? Okay.
You don't get the help you need.
Right.
If you hurt a limb on the ship, you have to hope it's not broken, or else you get medically discharged from your contract.
It's like the school nurse.
Yes.
Like, here's an ice pack.
But I had great care for some of the things that I needed on the ship.
Good.
I used to get migraines, and they would give me a liquid cocktail, one in each arm, one for pain medicine, one to make me sleep out the pain.
Fuck yeah.
Not healthy, but yeah.
No, but dope. I mean,
I'd go right back to work.
Hell of a way to party.
So yeah, and so I eventually finished up that contract, and Mitchell Anderson, who's a SM alum from UNCSA.
Love Mitchell.
Love Mitchell. Appreciate the hell out of him. He started with Norwegian Cruise Line, graduated to Disney, and he reached out to me when he saw that I was doing ships and really asked, how's it going? And we had some really frank discussions about it. And he said, well, I think you would like the bigger ships at NCL. They do book shows like we're sort of trained to get used to working on. I think there's something you would really like about them. They've got more traditional SM positions than you would see on Royal.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think you'd be a good fit for them. And I'll make the intro if you would like. And he did. And I immediately got hired. And I thought I was going back to New York. And it turned out they made me an offer like my second day on land back.
Wow.
So I immediately just got myself off the lease in New York and moved all my things back to my parents in New Jersey, who immediately moved it to Florida.
Right.
And so I transferred to NCL, Norwegian Cruise Line, and I was put as a rehearsal ASM on Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. Super fun musical.
Sure.
And then I was an install team member, which is when you rehearse in the rehearsal studios with the new cast, and then you go to the ship and you say goodbye to the old cast and you put in the new cast, and then I left, but the production stage manager stayed and did 6 months with that cast as their go-to point person.
Got it.
She oversaw. So the way that the bigger ships work for Norwegian is you have your primary venue with your book shows, like your $1 Million Quartets, your After Midnights, your Jersey Boys. They, I think, just announced Footloose. And then you've got your more niche venues. So some of the NCL ships have a Cirque Dreams show, which is a smaller, more contained version of Cirque du Soleil. It's a different company. And it's also ship friendly. And you can't do certain things on a ship that you can do on land, safety-wise.
And like fire and stuff?
Just the way, like, certain hand-to-hand, like you can do a lot on a ship, but the way that everything is built and rigged on a cruise ship is built so that if there is a worst case scenario, it sustains. And so you can't, you're also
like
limited.
What's off the table?
You
like,
have
what
limited
would you be
storage
like,
and
we can't
space.
do that.
Like I wouldn't, like I forget what it's called, but in Cirque, there's this act where these guys, like, they run on the thing and it's spinning and they, like, run and jump from thing to thing. I think it's in a Franco Dragone show or it's in a Cirque show. And you would never, first of all, you wouldn't have the space on a ship for that.
Right.
But just mechanically, you kind of have to build stuff to be semi-sustainable. You can do silks. You can do juggling. You can do juggling with all kinds of objects. You can do some hand-to-hand. But you have to... it all works a little bit differently because it's on a ship. It's a little bit, it has to be a little bit more set. Even if it's improv, it's a little bit set because you have parameters.
Okay.
Because you also don't necessarily have the luxury of like regular spot ups who can just pick you up because it's what they do every day. Like most, you're not going to have that in a round tent style venue on a cruise ship where you have a lighting person for the whole venue.
Almost like, I mean, it is literally traveling, even though you're not picking it up and moving it. But it's a tour thing. So
it's designed the way it's on tour.
Install it like you would in Vegas or some shit.
Absolutely.
Got it.
It's designed the way a tour is designed in that it's contained, but the creativity within the design is really great.
Got it.
And from what I've seen. And so the ship I was put on for a 6-month contract, the Norwegian Escape, I did 2 contracts on there. We had in our primary theater, we had a production stage manager who oversaw After Midnight and a different book show called For the Record. The company is based in LA, and they basically take genres or sequences of things and do like mashup musicals. So ours was the Brat Pack, and it was all the John Hughes 80s cool fun movies.
Fuck yeah.
So
that I know the names of and stuff like that, less so than a lot of the theater shit.
Yes.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty commercial.
Very commercial. Oddly, After Midnight seemed a little bit more received. I think because it was just the other show. I think For the Record, like you don't go in expecting it to be what it is, which is kind of a cool experience. But at the same time, if you're expecting to like sit down and watch a musical and it's just like rock and roll for like 90 minutes, you walk out of the theater like, what did we just do?
It feels more like a concert than a
It definitely feels more like a concert, which is not a bad thing. I've never had more fun calling a show.
Great.
It's the designer, Mike Berger, very good friend. He can design a hell of a show to call. Like we had over 600 light cues in 90 minutes.
That's what I'm talking about.
We used to have to write Ricola and water breaks into our scripts.
Wow.
Fucking balls awesome. Like ball the wall show call. And that's a show that you definitely can't. Like we time coded certain things, like video was linked to lighting. Thank God, because you couldn't physically call video with lighting there.
Yeah, exactly.
Unless you were calling both at the same time, but then like you can't always guarantee they're syncing that way. And so basically we had the one theater has their one person who oversees that venue. And then there's the supper club venue on the Norwegian Escape. And they took For the Record, the Brat Pack out of the supper club as a resident show and moved it to the theater. So the first 2 months I was on board, it was hellacious because we went from installing the new cast of After Midnight into putting a whole new musical in there. You're basically in tech all day, and then you're doing guest entertainer shows at night. So whatever you're teching during the day, you have to build into the schedule, change over time, so that you can not only rehearse a guest entertainer, but change the theater over for that person's show.
What does guest entertainer mean? Is like
They're the people who
singing
come on,
or just doing stand-up or something?
All of the above. They will come on for anywhere from 1 to 4 weeks.
Shorter term.
Totally shorter term contracts, and they will do you get like a juggling act, a magician act, tribute shows, like tribute bands, anything that keeps a guest entertained for 1 or 2 shows a night once a week.
Got it.
And there's also different performance venues around the ship. So we had a comedy club in a different venue that also doubled with Howl at the Moon, so late night dueling piano. So the comedians would do a late night they would do family sets at 7 and 9 one day a week in our main theater, and then adult at 11.
Hell yeah.
So that was sort of our way to fill in guest entertainer content throughout the week using the content of the comedians
the club,
on board.
Yeah, that's cool.
Super cool. And then in the supper club, we just had constant rotating guest entertainers. And we sort of got our roster of like the usual 5 or 6. So we had like a regular dinner act that was one act contracted for like a year. But the performers within that group change because of maritime law. If you're on board for more than 28 days, you kind of have to be a full-time employee.
Okay.
And then that changes completely the name of the game with how you can't get a guest entertainer cabin on board. You have to do the proper safety trainings. You can't just get one small briefing. You have to get like a full in-depth safety card.
I hear that.
It's
it gets more intense.
Contractually, you're limited to 28 days at a time. So
who was the best guest entertainer you saw while you were there?
Oh gosh, there were so many. My favorite comedian, who I love, Dean Edwards, because he's become a very dear friend of mine.
Okay.
He only did 1 or 2 stints on The Escape as a comedian. It was his first time doing cruise ships, and he
this guy up.
has had. He was on SNL from 2001 to 2003, I believe.
Okay.
His first day reporting to SNL was supposed to be September 11th, 2001.
Oh shit.
And so his first show as a cast member was.
Oh yeah, I've seen this guy.
Yeah, Dean's great, and so he just had a way to him. He was really open. Because he wasn't jaded about ships yet, and I had to do a safety briefing as his sort of overseer for the whole contract.
Totally.
I sort of like just hung out and bonded, and I was like, his comedy is different because he didn't come in here with only cruise ship oriented jokes. His comedy is
that what
about
a lot of comics did?
A lot
just
of
jokes
comics,
about being on a boat.
A lot of comics who specifically do cruise ship work will joke about cruise ships.
Is that like a niche area of comedy?
Totally. There are comedians who primarily do cruise ships. And the same thing with magicians and cover bands.
Sure.
It's like a whole industry.
That makes sense.
I know people whose entire professional career is cruise ships.
When did you decide that you didn't want to be on cruise ships anymore?
It was a mutual decision between me and NCL.
Yeah.
They changed my position. So my first contract, I was not a PSM in charge of any one venue. I was considered the swing. So musical.
They do that for stage managers? I think of that term in terms of like actors and musicians.
Same here. And it was a newer position because of their bigger ships being newer to the fleet. They were basically realizing, fuck, if our stage manager goes down, like if our PSM goes down and can't call a show, like let's say someone gets GI, like gets norovirus on board and they're out for like 4 days.
Okay.
Who the fuck is going to run the theater? And also, like, who's the backup for all these other positions?
Because you understudy PSM.
I understudied PSM, every crew position except automation for obvious safety reasons. The production manager who oversaw all the crew on board, the stage crew on board for all the different theaters and all the different mini performing venues like the pubs and the lounges. He covered automation in the event that there was an automation change out or someone was sick and couldn't do the job.
Okay.
I did every other hair,
That sounds
makeup,
fucking
wardrobe.
terrible.
It was awesome.
Really?
I got to create continuity backstage and on stage.
It just sounds like a lot of shit.
It was great. It
All
kept
right.
me entertained and allowed me to get, because if you're
You're
rehearsing
not getting bored.
totally. And if you're,
It's
when
that
you're calling,
ADD helping you out.
sure. And I also think I'm used to being in a rehearsal room and then
Right.
teching a show and then maintaining a show.
Right.
I knew the shows a little bit from the rehearsal room, but I was not in after midnight for all of the rehearsals. I sat in on one or two to get to know the team because I happened to be living at my parents' house in Tampa, Florida. I wasn't there to get to know the show. On purpose.
Right.
It was a bonus. And so I signed on and was like, how the fuck am I supposed to call a show? I don't know. Or like basically one of my first contracts on board, the job of an opener is to get the ship in motion. The job of a second contract holder is to archive everything.
Got it.
Now that the ship is open, it's in operation, you have to stabilize it for the rest of however long it runs.
That sounds boring.
It's a little tedious, but it also just means you keep a keen eye to everything.
Right.
So my first 2 weeks on board, I was handing over. One of our hair and makeup person was signing off, and she didn't have a handover for After Midnight, and After Midnight has wigs for almost every female character. So there's a lot that needs to go on there. It's a lot. And I knew that the girl who was coming on board wouldn't need me to teach her maintenance because there was a whole Bible that had been prepared for her. But she needed someone to teach her the physical track of the show. So that was my first coverage. Then I gradually would cover, we had multiple wardrobe tracks. So I would cover those, and I would help, and it helped everyone out because I was a trained stage manager and I knew theater. Not everyone comes into ships and does theater there with the same background. You can work your way into being a stage crew, a stage staff member, which is amazing because it allows people from third world countries the ability to take bona fide experience. Like I saw someone from the engineering team, and he over my 2 contracts, Jeff is now a career stage staff on cruise ships, and he was in the engine team, and he said, I want to make more money and I want to kill myself less working.
Yeah.
So he works, 40 hours a week versus, 70, and he makes twice as much.
He's a way in.
Totally.
That's
and
cool.
He trained, and he was great. And so also for wardrobe, you hire your dishwashers and your housekeepers, and you basically give them a payment stipend to be your run crew on wardrobe.
Got it.
And that's
so
how
really
changeovers happen.
That's
Totally.
pretty cool.
And that's how changeovers happen.
I
on
would
those
not
bigger
have
ships.
guessed that. I would have guessed
Small
it would be
ships
very
don't work that way.
Like you have to fucking go stay over here and just stay in your lane and stay out of the theater. That's not your shit.
It's a manpower need, truly, is what it is.
Got it.
Small ships don't have that, but
So
bigger
why'd you
ships.
leave?
I got really burnt out. You don't get a day off when you work on cruise ships. If the theater's not, if you're not overseeing something, what are you doing? The ship has to have entertainment 7 days a week because there's guests on board 7 days a week. So you never get a full 24 hours off. And I really think that burns people out. And
that would burn me out.
NCL had and developed and cultivated a policy where even though there's a backup position on board, nobody gets a day off.
Right.
Ship-wide policy. So it's our entertainment policy. Captain doesn't get a day off. Nobody gets a day off. And I went, yeah, but Captain works half as long a contract as I do.
Yeah, motherfucker's driving a boat too. That's a little bit different.
He also gets coverage. Like obviously he's on call for everything and he's responsible for everything.
And
but
he
when
has
he
to
leaves
die
the
if
bridge,
the ship wrecks.
100%. Victor Garber, whoever it was in Titanic, take note. And but like when you never are off the clock.
Right.
You are always on call. I had safety duties. I was up inspecting cabins every 2 weeks at 8 a.m. as part of my ship managerial duty. So you have a separation. Like you're not just doing entertainment. You're doing ship stuff. And I didn't mind that, but I think when you don't get to really rest your brain and everyone sort of snarks on entertainment because you work less and you make more than everyone else on board, it's a lot of Americans in entertainment because you're more front facing.
Until you train all of the engineers and janitors to come up and
performers and anyone who's hosting a game show for the guests, like all of the more guest interfacing jobs, you have to be really solid on your English.
Of course.
So typically you're from a more privileged country and you're getting a more privileged position and paycheck.
Yeah.
Definitely there's an attitude around entertainment. And I...
So you just needed a fucking break.
I needed a break. I think I also didn't like where they were redirecting the position. I went from calling shows every single week regularly. There were some, like the PSMs in each venue basically said, my first priority is to get you up to par on how to run my venue. Because if I take a work break, if I'm up in medical, if I want to go sit and watch backstage to mitigate a personnel issue.
Yeah.
If I want to sit and note a show that has Tony Award winning choreography and I don't know tap dance, I need you to know things and I
Yeah.
need you to be good at it.
Yeah.
And so I became the universal show caller on board. I became the universal stage crew on board. I covered every single backstage track and calling track. And some nights a week, they would just hand me over the theater. They weren't absent. They weren't not working. They weren't out having margaritas. They sometimes would go have a dinner and then they would go back to the office and work on advanced paperwork if we were swapping out dance captains. So my second contract, they reassigned my position to basically be the administrative assistant to entertainment. And I didn't appreciate that. I wasn't allowed to call shows more than once a month. I was overseeing more in the entertainment that wasn't inside the theater.
They took the fun out of it for you.
They made
Inadvertently.
They changed the job description without changing the title, and they should have changed the title.
Got it.
I should have been entertainment facility, like coordinate. Like there's 1,000 different titles it could have been, but it wasn't a stage management position anymore.
Right.
So, for example, we had a version of Deal or No Deal that the cruise director would play 3 times a week with guests, and I was in charge of running the game. But I ran it out of the broadcast office, and the people who understudied me and ran it if I wasn't there, say I got called away to a theater emergency, the people who ran it were the broadcast team, and there's 3 of them and 1 of me. So why is it on my plate to click a button from another room remotely on the ship? And there's also the thing where I like to be good at what I do. I hope very often I am. And the cruise director strongly preferred and could tell right away if it wasn't me.
Right.
And he had a bee in his bonnet about any time I wanted to deviate from
I love that expression.
Oh God, everyone really was harsh about this new job description, and it just really ate at me. And I was just like, my hours have gone up. I'm doing all the busy work, but I'm not actually getting anything out of it.
Right.
And I basically became the company manager for guest entertainers, which was great. I was so happy to do that. And I think it would have and should have been an easy additional workload had I been allowed to do anything else remotely related to theater as part of a natural fit. So I walk away saying anyone who wants to do cruise ships, proceed with caution. Like, don't assume it's going to be your life, but go in and give it like a good try. Yeah. Like, I don't regret for a second that I worked on cruise ships. I have met some of the most hardworking people. I'm Jewish, as we've discussed at length, but so sometimes, like when I'm in North Carolina, I understand what it's like not to be the majority. Like Cherry Hill's a huge Jewish populated town, town with Jews. I just botched all that. So on cruise ships, After Midnight is an all black show. 99% black musicians as well. Mm-hmm. Comparing that with the Brat Pack show, that's 99% white. Right. And there were contractual differences between both shows. For the Record was basically a show rental. They basically rented the rights to the show. And we were an iteration. They could have performed it on land too at the same time. Actually, I don't know that. But they were their own company on land, and we borrowed their show to put on board. We owned After Midnight in the sense that the company had bought the rights to and bought essentially the show's items. Our costumes were the costumes from New York. So we were maintaining these beautiful $6,000 couture costumes on board. Okay. And so there's a difference in contracts for performers and musicians for each show that way. And it drew a lot of racial tension.
She's saying it's a problem that you guys owned the black show.
When you say it like that. But there were other small cabaret style shows, and anytime a guest entertainer show required musicians, the show that was not a rental was the show doing that work.
Got it.
There is a huge, understandable discernment that comes with saying, hey, show celebrating Harlem, that a lot of old white racist people would come up to me and complain about. A shocking number of people would come up to me in the buffet. Like just the fact that it existed? I will never forget. I used to do the behind the scenes tours every week. So I would interface with guests a little bit extra. And I was
Now we're getting to it. Rat out these old racist people.
Oh God, I was up in the buffet, and this couple that had been on one of the tours came up to me and said hi. And I said, oh, hi, nice to see you guys. How'd you like After Midnight? So when are we going to get those other shows? And I'm like, the Brat Pack, the guest entertainers, we got like 8 shows this week. Which one do you mean?
Right.
And he goes, the ones were like, the cruise ship shows where you got like the girls and those little costumes. And the guy's wife is next to him. Like
Sure.
she has a smile on her face. Like she's not
She wants to
ashamed
see
of
the
him
girls
saying,
too.
evidently. And so like traditionally cruise ships that are smaller have review style shows, and it's like very Vegas.
They want to see. I was gonna say they want to see the Vegas shit.
They did not they didn't have their hearing aids on for my tour because they heard none of what I said to describe the shows on board because none of them have a Vegas feel. If anything, After Midnight does because of the glamour of it all.
Sure.
And so I just looked at him and I said, well, the next show is the Brat Pack and it's 80s style. I don't think there's any feather costumes in that one.
Right.
And he's like, well, I just don't want to see any of that crap on stage anymore. And I was like, well, their last performance was yesterday, so onward and upward. I just like walked away. I was like, God, what do I do?
Like they're not gonna like me anymore.
Oh my
yeah.
God! And it was awful. And I definitely can understand. There's resentment. I oversaw and stage managed these 2 Motown-inspired cabarets that were designed for the dining room and the big atrium where you host all these game show type things. We had 7 performers on wireless mics. Do you know how hard that is to coordinate with receivers at the back end of a ship that doesn't have a proper sound system set up for it? And you've also got a 5-piece band playing.
Right.
It was terrible.
Just putting that thing in that place.
The sound never worked. And the cast, and it's my job to be like, well.
And then people think it sucks as a thing because of the technology.
Well, and it sucks for the performers. This is supposed to be their night off. The other cast, the rest of their cast that's not doing these shows, it's only the singer tracks in After Midnight doing this. The dancers get the night off, but they've got to go perform.
Got it.
And one of the sax players performs, but not the other saxes. So it's just like they rotate it. And there were always issues. And I always felt so terribly because I knew the shows were bad. My second contract, when we went to install them, Shoreside sent a sound contractor. And that poor dude spent like 4 hours every day when we were in port up in the rafters of that dining room doing any and everything he could to clean it up. And he just called me one day. He called my ship phone. And he said, look, I think I got it as good as it can go, but like, I just can't guarantee 7 wireless mics plus the sound setup is ever going to function properly. And I went, can you write that down in as detailed a description as you can and then submit that to Shoreside?
Put that on someone's desk.
And then I want to like put posters of that all over backstage.
So they know.
And the poor cast's just morale was always just so low because you're performing in venues that aren't at the theater. So you are at everyone else's hand for scheduling.
You feel like a cheaper act.
Absolutely. And when you're dog and ponying like that, it's such a shitty experience. And I always felt so badly being like the white girl who's telling all the black people like, hey, you need to come do a show that sucks and I'm going to yell at you if you're late because I know you don't want to be here, but your job is to be on time. Right. And we only have 30 minutes to sound check 18 different mics because the hotel director is kicking us out.
Not helping the stereotype of the Jewish woman bossing around the black singers.
And it was the worst. And I knew it and I couldn't figure out how many different ways can I acknowledge it. And there was one point where one of their performers went at me in a full department meeting, like every performer on board, every crew on board, full department meeting. And I'm just sitting there and I was like, dude, I'm about as frustrated as you are. In the back of my head saying this, I was like, I want to yell like you are.
I don't blame you for wanting to get out of that situation.
And to tell you right now, who checks in on me more than anyone else when there's a post that the day isn't going great? Who says, I'm so happy to see your career blossoming and vice versa? Darren. And I'm sitting there on stage listening to Darren scream and yell.
Who is Darren?
He was the performer who lost it in this full company meeting.
Got it.
Understandably, he was a massive ship veteran. He knew his shit. And he knew his shit and his ship. And he wanted better. And I did too. And he's not CC'd on my reports to Shoreside outlining all the issues. He's not in these closed door meetings where the person above me says, I'm going to advocate for you as the leader of the entertainment department and I'm going to be there for you. And then the next day when there's an issue, she says, well, that's ships. If you don't like it, you should quit. To be dealing with the flip-flopping of your own managers like that. He doesn't know that. He's not privy to it. He doesn't know that I'm taking all that weight and just not displaying it for them.
So we're almost out of time, but I want to get.
So that was
Go ahead,
ships,
yeah.
but I think they are such a specific type of work environment that I am now so close and so respectful of everyone that I worked with, because work ethic wise, it takes a lot to say I'm putting my entire life on hold to go do this thing and see if I want to continue putting real life on hold like that.
Right.
You're working and living in a microcosm, but you're aware of it. It's like living in the Truman Show, but also knowing you're on the Truman Show.
Right. But being aware of it.
Yes.
So
and
you're
knowing
like
you
the
can't
sequel
escape.
to the Truman Show where he decides to stay in the
100%.
bubble.
I'm Jim Carrey after he exits, but also still has the
but then
existential
walks
crisis.
back in there.
Yeah. So anyways, that's just like the roundup of cruise ships. And like it opened up a really interesting
I think that's
door
really
for me.
insightful for anybody who's looking for a glimpse into that. I want to give you 5 minutes because it's about what we have to talk about the book. I want to talk about the book.
Yes. Okay. So
tell me about the children's book that you've been working on with your mom.
Yeah, Natural Pathway from screaming all day on cruise ships to books for kids.
I wanted to round out with something that brings you joy.
Oh, and I love that because at the time, cruise ships, I knew that aspects of it brought me joy, but I also would go on land every week. My sibling was at Miami, so I was docked out of Miami. So every Saturday for a year, I could see my sibling. I had never seen them this much once I sort of left the house in high school to do theater all the time. So Jeremy, in hindsight, goes, boy, I'm so happy you're not bitching to me every Saturday anymore. That was a lot of bitching you did. That was a lot of venting.
Right.
And I was like, wow, was it? And so over the years, I have gradually come to the openness in my mind of wanting to facilitate creativity through my own lens. I don't want to I want to not just be a facilitator of other people's creativity. I want to be able to physically roll up my sleeves and be creative and
make it.
And yes, and also use the side of my brain that does everything we just talked about for 17 hours.
Right.
So I took the Creative Catalyst certificate course through the Keenan Institute during COVID.
Cool.
I was the second class to do it. And I just sort of felt confident in myself. I also got a writing mentor by stalking someone from my hometown on LinkedIn. I looked up notable alumni. I messaged her on LinkedIn, whole paragraph about you have to like me, blah, blah, blah. I'm from Cherry Hill. Please. I'm not crazy. I know I look crazy. And she just writes back, yeah, here's my info.
There you go.
And she's now a dear mentor of mine. And so I basically, between all of that and living with my mom during COVID, we had previously floated the idea years ago that our family dog, Lucy, has been on so many fun adventures that we should write a book about it. And she's just got this really expressive way to her. You've seen pictures of her over the years. You can tell how she is through photos just by the look in her eye. And she's just so friendly, and she just makes everyone wants to be her friend whenever she goes somewhere. People just want to be around. She's a service dog the way your dog's an emotional support dog, and I think people just really pick up on that.
Yeah,
it's a personality trait. And my mom and I living together during COVID recognized that we wouldn't be able to just do one book. We took the time to hone the narrative style we wanted. We took time to research what classic stories did really well.
Right.
What makes Amelia Bedelia or Henry and Mudge beloved? And what did we want to do that's got a contemporary feel to it, but has elements of being classic?
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't want to write about just topical stuff. We're writing about all of these lessons children learn in every generation through the eyes of a dog. So our typical age range for readers is 4 to 6 years old, is what we've written it to. We took educational rubrics. We created a focus group of educators and young children. We still float every manuscript and every book before we visually finish proofing it goes through them.
That's awesome.
It's the only reason. It's due diligence,
Yeah.
You're not going to
I'd expect nothing else from a stage manager.
I was the one ready to go, and my mom's like, we should get people's feedback first. I just wanted to get something done during COVID. And we've received 2 Kirkus recommended reviews for each of our, first 2 books respectively. Kirkus Reviews is the institution for self-published books. And
that's your Rotten Tomatoes.
So yeah, the more particular version.
Got it.
And we are in the top 10% of review recipients in terms of the type of reviews we get, which is such confirmation that we've honed a really cool idea. Like we've cultivated
You did it the right
a
way.
viable concept, and then the feedback we got was valuable.
That's awesome.
And so we've got Lovable Lucy's Big Day is book 1. Lovable Lucy goes to her forever family, and it's all first person through Lucy's eyes. So it's Hi, I'm Lovable Lucy is the narrative style. And the first book is meeting the forever family and exploring the home. And it's that metaphor for children of going to your first day of school, going to a new family, all of these things that kids do that's a first.
Right.
It allows them to learn how to express themselves. Lucy says I feel or I am a lot. And through her family and her friends, she learns how to overcome these different obstacles. And in the second book, she learns how to explore her neighborhood a little bit more by learning commands like sit and stay and the challenge of walking on a leash. She gets really frustrated. So different
Which kids these days have to learn how to do also.
Totally, right? And
put a leash on your fucking kids, by the way. I'm sick of tripping over all these fuckers.
I'm 4'11". You can't say too many things about putting people
It's too triggering about them being small. I apologize.
I can't walk through an NBA like a basketball court. I gotta be on a leash, right? I'm like a trip hazard.
Lose you.
Joel Embiid's gonna break a hip because of me. and I'm really happy with the series so far. We are selling them now. We're starting to do more press and promo. So this is sort of like a quasi variation.
Where can people find these books?
You can go to our website, loveablelucyseries.com.
Nice.
And we have a great distributor. We're starting to get sold in stores. We've been going to different stores in our respective local towns, and there are some Barnes and Nobles and independent stores out here that are going to start carrying the books too. So
that's awesome.
Slowly but surely we'll take over the world.
Do you think that's going to be a thing that becomes a really big part of what you're doing artistically, or is it becoming like a, an additional revenue stream and another kind of side project, or
for right now it's
is there
the
a world
part-time.
where you're a child's book author and that's what your main thing is?
I don't know that I only want to work in the kids sector, because part of where I love being creative is finding ways to convey aspects of life to people in a new way.
Yeah.
Like I love looking at the world and going, what if?
Sure.
So I have a real love for just going, I can talk about this one because I've submitted this screenplay to competition. So it's a project, it's an entity that is out there. It's called My Life is a Ship Show. And I've gone through iterations of what this concept could be in terms of a workplace comedy.
Is it like a short film or a TV
It would be a
pilot
workplace
kind of
comedy.
Got it.
Yeah, and it would be super fun. And it would be like Schitt's Creek meets Cheers.
But on a boat.
Right. Because I love the containment element of Cheers, but I don't want only traditional characters the way Cheers really laid out these really innovative versions of them, though.
And Cheers was very much shot like a play.
Totally was. And I love that. And so I love taking the idea of the show must go on, but what happens when there is no show? And that's you can't cancel a show on a cruise ship unless the ship is rocking too much. Then you don't do a show, but you never cancel. That's like a policy.
Yeah.
And I also love the idea of reversing the showcase of customer service, because cruise ships are customer service.
Yeah,
all
100%.
you do is interface with guests. And so everyone has that experience of being in line behind a crazy person or being in a position where you're a Karen and you're not normally a Karen. I certainly have.
Sure.
And everyone has sort of had that entry-level job where you flip burgers, you make coffee, you sell sweatshirts, whatever it is.
I was a pancake slinger myself.
Nice.
Yeah.
You must be really good to have over for brunch. I make
Not
good
bad.
omelets.
Yeah.
So
We'll have to team up. We'll talk goth Jews.
I was just thinking, how do I do a squid egg omelet?
It's going to be good.
So I just love taking concepts and going, wait, it's theater. It's a show about theater, but it's a show for anyone else who can relate through customer service of that very specific lens. So I just love being able to take framing concepts and utilize them to tell stories.
Yeah.
So I really hope that I eventually get to become a full-time creative, whether it's through supervising producer, whatever it is. But we have so many ideas for where the book series can expand to.
Of course.
And we're hoping that in maybe 12 to 24 months, it becomes the more primary that you suggested instead of just secondary. But right now,
hey, you got to take your time.
I dedicate 10 to 15 hours a week
Great.
to it, in addition to my own 40-hour a week job. And I also I also am the owner and editor of the Theatrical Index. I took over as the owner and editor a year ago. It's a big operation, one person. And The original woman who created it 20 years ago, Rebecca Watson, great New York actress. She's done any and everything. She has worked at like every regional theater in America. She created a 30-something page index that she updates every month, and it's every theater that does a equity contract in America's programming for the season. The director, choreographer, sometimes the creative team behind a show, the executive director, creative producer at a theater. Anything you could need as a networking resource for actors, and I think other positions as well, but mostly actors.
It's called a theatrical index?
Theatrical index.
Index.
No, what am I calling it? No, I totally just mixed it up. Theatrical index is what I took inspiration from. It's called the season overview.
That's a completely different
I just totally
title.
gave you a completely different thing.
That's okay.
And I think I just always mix them up in my brain because I loved the theatrical index as a kid, like as a theater kid. Like in college, Frank Lombardi introduced it to me, and then I used it up until I quit stage management. And when I was updating and giving a facelift to the season overview, I was like, what kind of things can I get inspiration from? Because I don't want it to look like the yellow pages online. And it's hard to make something that's existed only in print form interesting online. Like I update a PDF every month and I put it on a website. Like how do I jazz this up? I scour the theatrical index for inspiration. So that's why I just had that Freudian slip. But the season overview, I update every single month. The first of every month, I just go in and update it. And it's a great resource. It's $14.95 a month, or it's $161 for the year.
Good value.
Super great value. And you can get, it's now 54 pages long because I decided to add in summer theaters as an addendum. So obviously not the season right now for it, but I update them whenever there's seasonal updates. Some theaters that only do summer seasons have already announced next summer. I think it's Utah Shakespeare Festival. They've already announced 2023. But I just want to give actors resources. We are in an era where everyone's moved out of New York. The way that we audition is completely different. The way that we network is completely different. I think a lot more people deserve opportunities. If you don't know what's out there and getting made, if you don't know that a theater exists, how are you going to find out about the world premiere they're promoting?
Right.
If you are from Wisconsin, how are you going to find out that some theater in Virginia is doing a show that you'd be perfect for?
You used to have to just know somebody.
Totally.
And now you can find it all at the season overview.
Yeah, the season overview.
Season overview.
Oh, yeah.
Get it. Go get it. It's worth the value. Get yourself both of the Lovable Lucy books and stay tuned for Goth Jews coming this fall or maybe next fall. We're going to figure it out.
Never.
Just be patient. Thank you.
I'll talk forever if you let me.
I know. That's why I got to cut it. But we're going to have you on again next time, and we'll catch up on all the stuff that you're working your ass off.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing this.
You're welcome. It's hard to interview with you because we've known each other for so long that we can and do talk about any and everything.
Right.
So it's hard to have a more streamlined conversation with you.
Well, that's okay. I do my best
fun,
to guide it. Thank you, Shayna.
Love the Goth Jews.